when I say food, what comes to your mind?
Avocado.
Avocado, all right.
Broccoli.
Broccoli.
Chocolate.
How about this? Chocolate. So how about this? When I say, what's the purpose of food, what comes to your mind?
Medicine.
Food as medicine, I like that. Energy, okay? What are some other things?
Comfort.
Comfort, I like that. Okay. So I want you guys to understand, here's what the purpose of food is, okay? The purpose of food is this. The purpose of food is for healing, repair, recovery, and function. So the purpose of why you should be eating is to help your body repair, to help your body recover, to help your body heal, to help your body function. That's what the food is, because embedded inside the food are enzymes, vitamins, things like that, that are helping to unlock keys within the cell in order for certain processes to take place. Problem is, when we look at food today, you know how we're really looking at food? We're looking at food as either comfort, as either pleasure, or we're looking at food as distraction, or we're looking at food as punishment or diet or weight loss. You see how we're looking at it? Because how many times you put food in your body and you're saying this, will this help me lose weight? Or you're putting something in your body and you're saying, will this bring me pleasure as a distraction from life stresses? And so really what we have to start looking at food is every single bite that we take is saying, is this actually helping me to heal, repair, and to grow? Or is this doing the exact opposite? And that way food should not be a source of comfort. Your source of comfort should come from your mission in life, not from what you're eating every single day. So let's unlock this nutrition code, okay? Now, I work with a lot of athletes. I have 2 gyms, and so people always ask me, hey, Dr. Nate, I want to perform better, or I want to look better. What should I be eating? Rather than the fact you should say, I want to be healthier, what should I be eating? So there's a difference between health versus performance, and let me tell you the biggest difference between that, okay? Now, first of all, ladies, can you stop being on Instagram and Facebook and following these ladies? Can you please stop that?
No problem.
No problem. Here's the reason why. Because there's a lot of women who are 35 and under that these are their diet gurus. Let me ask you a question, ladies. Is that healthy? Absolutely not. Because while they're showing what they look like on Instagram, you know what they're not telling you? They're not telling you that hormonally they are an absolute disaster and they're a wreck. What they should say is I look like that and I have a 28-day menstrual cycle. Because guess what? If you look like that, you ain't having a 28-day menstrual cycle. And in fact, this woman is becoming sicker and sicker and sicker hormonally. You want to know why? Because we're not supposed to have an 8-pack. Do you guys know that? From a health perspective, you are not supposed to have an 8-pack. That includes men as well. Now, I will say this. Can you have an 8-pack and still be healthy? For a time being, but you should not try to have a 6-pack or an 8-pack for 12 months out of the year. Does that make sense? And this is women and ladies. So, body fat percentage. What do you think is the most healthiest for women? It's not 8% or 6%. And in fact, they actually have found that as far as longevity is concerned, whenever anyone has a body fat under 10%, longevity goes down. That means you don't live as long when you have a low body fat and you have ripped abs. Can you imagine that? So it's not necessarily healthy if society says, that looks great, I want to look like that. But the problem is you may look great, you may have a lot of people admiring you, but guess what happens? You die early. So body fat percentage for women should be around, probably I would say a minimum about 18% to 24%. And for men, it should be about 12 to 18%. Is where the happy medium actually is. Now, let's talk about performance. Because when people say, I want to perform better, I say, well, what do you want to perform better at? And that depends. So, a power lifter, what does his nutrition look like if he's a power lifter? Eat whatever you want, whenever you want, and eat a lot of it. And the reason why is, how many people have ever heard of the statement, mass moves mass? Meaning, the more weight that you put on, the more weight you're going to be able to move. And so this guy right here, he eats whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and it doesn't matter the kind of food that he's eating. So here's what happens. He wins his powerlifting event, and he dies at 50 of a heart attack. What good is that? Except a couple of medals that you get and everyone says, hey, you're a champion powerlifter when you're dead at 50. So the reality is what should be the most important thing for you? Because none of you are going to be a champion powerlifter. Agreed? None of you are going to go to the CrossFit Games and win. What should your goal then be? Health or performance? Health. So you're focusing on health, and then performance is at the top part of the pyramid, but it's not at the base. I want to talk to you about the hierarchy of fitness. Because a lot of times, if someone says, I want to lose weight, the first thing is they say, I need to go where? To the gym, right? Well, when we start teaching people at our gyms about what the hierarchy of fitness is, at the very bottom is actually what? Nutrition. So at the very bottom is nutrition, because when you have a solid base when it comes to nutrition, all of these other things will actually start to fall into place. So if you're going to the gym and you're trying to get into shape, here's how you should do it. Because we teach this as health first and what last? Performance. So watch. Abs are made in the kitchen, not in the gym. But you only should have abs for how long? Maybe a month out of the year. Next thing is metabolic conditioning. So what's metabolic conditioning? High intensity, short duration exercise. So your ability to be able to perform work in X amount of time. The better you can move, the faster you can move in X amount of time, the more metabolically fit you actually are. And do you live longer when you're more metabolically fit? Absolutely. The next thing that you should focus on is gymnastics. So what do I mean by gymnastics? Your ability to be able to move your own body weight. So your ability to be able to move your own body weight. I say, who cares if you can deadlift 700 pounds if you can't do a pull-up? Or you can't get yourself on the ground and do a burpee. So this is all about moving your own body. And moving your body well. Because here's the thing. When you're 80 years of age, what do you need to be able to do? Pick yourself off of the floor. You have to be able to push yourself off of the ground. You should be able to pull yourself, your own body weight up to a certain height. You should be able to do those things, and if you can't do it, or you should be able to squat. And if you can't do that, guess what? You're going to fall and you're going to die, or you're going to get stuck on a toilet for 18 hours, or something like that is going to happen. So you should be able to efficiently be able to move your body. And this includes even teaching people to go inverted and be able to walk on their hands. Whoa, are you serious? Yeah, you're really fit if you can do that. And then the next thing should actually be weightlifting. So what's weightlifting? Your ability to be able to move an external load a certain distance. So what would this look like? So weightlifting would be things like deadlifting, or being able to squat with an external load, or being able to press things overhead or pick things up off of the ground. And then finally, once you have that base, then you start working on your sport. And what would be your sport? Because people are like, I want to be really good at tennis. Start doing all of this, and you automatically will become better at tennis and at golf, baseball, softball, whatever sport you're playing. This is what fitness is here in the United States. We do this. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to play tennis, or I'm going to golf more, or I'm going to start running 5Ks, or I'm going to do whatever. How about this in the United States? What do we do for our kids that's absolutely destroying their health? They have none of this, but we sure as heck are willing to have them do a travel sport and pay thousands of dollars to teach them how to pitch when they have no idea how to lift a weight, how to squat, how to do a pull-up, how to do any kind of conditioning whatsoever, and they sure as heck, I guarantee, are eating like garbage. So here you have these kids who have a 90-mile-an-hour fastball who don't even know how to get off of a toilet correctly. Does that make sense? This is what we do. Maybe I should play a sport. Maybe I should go to the gym and work on a bunch of machines. I'm sure as heck never going to do any push-ups, burpees, or pull-ups. I'm sure as heck that I'm not going to do any kind of conditioning. If I do have enough time, I will go on the treadmill, the bike, the elliptical, or a rower and do it really slow because I don't want it to be very uncomfortable. And then finally, nutrition. Here's what we do. I'm going to work out and I'm going to earn my nutrition. And I'm going to earn my nutrition, and what do we mean? Not by eating right. I'm going to earn my nutrition so that I can have what at night?
Ice cream.
Whatever I want. Why did I know that you were going to say that? So let's talk about the hierarchy of nutrition now. So you know that the hierarchy of fitness But let's talk about what's the most important versus the least important. So remember we talked about the hierarchy of nutrition. We're talking about health first, and then performance is what? Last. Now, would you agree that if you want to be an unbelievable CrossFit athlete, that in order for you to perform the best, that you should have this foundation first? Absolutely. So let's talk about this. Number one, your nutrition should be non-inflammatory. So everything that you put inside of your body should not elicit an inflammatory response. And I'm going to show you how to decide what's inflammatory or what isn't. The reason why is inflammation a good thing or a bad thing? It depends. It depends on what the goal is, right? If I sprain my ankle, is inflammation good or bad? Good. Good. What does your doctor say? It's bad. Take a bunch of anti-inflammatories. Your body has to have an inflammatory response to heal. Does that make sense? So if you sprain your ankle, you better have swelling, you better have pain, you better have heat, you better have redness, you better have all those things, because that means that the immune system is going in there to fix, heal, and repair. So inflammation in that is good, but is chronic inflammation good or bad? It's really bad. So the first thing is your food should be non-inflammatory. The second thing is, the next most important thing should be focusing on your insulin levels. Raise your hand if you know what insulin is. You guys know what insulin is? Okay. So this is what's interesting. Every single chronic disease is going to parallel your insulin levels. So if you have high insulin levels, guess what? You're going to have higher incident rate of heart disease, higher incident rate of cancer, higher incident rate of type 2 diabetes, and a higher incident rate of arthritis. These are the things that are affecting people today. So do you know the foods that are influencing your insulin levels? So here's the thing. Do you guys know how insulin is spiked inside the body? So the insulin is spiked inside the body by two things. By the way, what organ is responsible for your insulin levels? Pancreas. The pancreas. So the pancreas is going to secrete two hormones, insulin and glucagon. Insulin is released to bring blood sugar down and store it into your fat cells. Glucagon is when your blood sugar goes low, and it signals the liver and the muscles to do what? To release stored sugar, to bring your blood sugars back up. So the pancreas has two functions. It's an endocrine gland. Endo means it squirts hormones into your internal environment, meaning into your blood. But do you guys know that the pancreas is also an exocrine gland? Meaning it actually will shoot enzymes into the external environment of your body. Now, do you have an external environment within your body? Yes, it's called your digestive system. Do you know from the mouth all the way down to the anus is completely outside of the body's internal environment? How many people knew that? So it's an exocrine gland because it helps with breaking down foods inside your body. How many people knew that the pancreas was also helped you break down and digest your foods? So what happens is anytime you eat something that's going to put sugar into the blood, the body has to then send a message to the pancreas and says, hey pancreas, we need some insulin, and it releases insulin into the blood, and that hormone will then attach to cells like your liver, like your muscles and your fat cells, open up the cells, and that insulin unlocks those cells to bring what into that tissue? Sugar, okay? Is insulin a good thing? Yes. You die without it. It's a bad thing when it is chronically elevated, okay? Third thing should be your micronutrients. So by micronutrients, I'm talking about things like what? Vitamins, minerals. Now, do vitamins cure cancer?
No.
No. You know what they do? Vitamins and mineral allow for normal cellular processes to take place. Which, by the way, normal inside the body means you don't get cancer, or you don't get heart disease, or you don't get diabetes. All it allows for you to do is to have normal physiological process inside the body, because the normal state of the body is to be well. Fourth thing, macronutrients. So when I talk about macronutrients, we're talking about what? Proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and in what ratio should you be consuming that? And then finally, the last thing should be your supplements. Here's what nutrition is in the United States. Supplements, then macro, then micro, then insulin, and the last thing that we ever worry about is inflammation. How do I know this? Because every day people message me email me or ask me in the office, hey Dr. Nate, I'm not sleeping very well. You have a supplement for that? Do you guys see how that's the wrong thinking? Because if you're not sleeping well, guess what? I guarantee you that you're inflamed, that your insulin's out of whack, you're not getting the micronutrients, you're definitely not doing this. This is the last thing you should be concerned about. But we are conditioned in the United States, whenever I have a health problem, either take a drug or take a what if I don't want to take a drug? Take a supplement. And meanwhile, your base is your supplements, and that's why you stay sick. So we should not be focused on performance, we should be focused on health first. And this right here is designed to help fill in the gaps. It's really designed to help fill in the gaps until we figure out where the holes are, or a supplement should only be designed for you to take if you are consciously choosing to be sassy. Make sense? And I'll show you when we consciously choose to be sassy. So, first thing you have to do is your nutrition has to be non-inflammatory. The reason why is inflammation is the spark that ignites the fire of disease inside the body. Autoimmune disease, inflammation. Type 2 diabetes, inflammation. Thyroid disease, inflammation. Infertility, inflammation. And then cancer, inflammation. Weight loss, inflammation. Arthritis, hormone imbalances. All those things are inflammation inside the body. Now here's the thing. These are where you're getting your sources of inflammation. Physical inflammation. Physical injury to the spine, to your joints, to your nerve system. The reason why this is so important is because just when you look at the spine's protecting what? Neurology. The neurology is what is controlled of rest and digest or fight or flight. Did you know that? Rest and digest and fight or flight. And if I damage my nerve system, most people damage parts of the nerve system that put their body in what is known as fight or flight. You guys know that? And if I'm in fight or flight, guess what happens? I don't digest my foods, I don't want to sleep, I don't want to repair, I don't want to heal. The only thing I want to do is get rid of the bear in my life. That's the only thing. So the body says, I have no priority for you to lose weight or do anything productive. All I want to do is get out of the crisis or get out of the emergency. And this is why when you start addressing just this, are there people who get off of reflux medication just by taking physical inflammation and stress off the spine and nerve system? All the time. Because what does it do? It takes them out of this, in which they don't want to digest their food, and it relaxes them, start to digest, and they start sleeping better, and they say, am I crazy? Because we know if you remove interferences, the natural process of the body is to do what? Heal and get better. Then you have chemical inflammation, and a big part of this is going to be what? What is your chemical inflammation? Your food that you're putting inside your body, and then mental inflammation. How many of you have absolutely zero stress in your life? You have zero stress? Yeah. We all have stress. And is it just me, but as you get older, doesn't life get more stressful and more complicated? It seems like it, doesn't it? And so we all have stress. And in fact, I would contend that we have a lot more stress than we did 40 or 50 years ago. Because is life more difficult, more complex, and more technology advanced? I mean, if you want to stress something out, I'm going to give a 70-year-old an iPhone and tell him to figure it out on your own, right? Yes, you're going to see his digestive system go haywire when that happens. So yes, you do have to start looking at all those different triggers, and I'm going to show you how you do that if you're a guest here, right after, how you start addressing the whole body as a Swiss watch. You have to address all of those different things when it comes to inflammation, because it's not just all happening from just the food that you're eating, although fixing your foods is obviously going to help. So let's talk about non-inflammatory. Your first priority is for it to be non-inflammatory. Here's how you know this, okay? This is what no one is actually looking at. If I would take an x-ray of someone's belly. So this would be their left hip, the right hip, looking at them from the back, and then this would be the spine, and then if you look like in through here, you're going to see, what you're looking at in through here is you're going to be looking at the stomach, over here is going to be the liver, and then you're looking at the large intestines and the small intestines, okay? When you look at this soft tissue in through there, what should it look like? It should look like it's all gray. That means that there's no gas, no inflammation or anything that's taking place. I want you to look at this x-ray. So if you look at this x-ray right here, does anybody see a lot of gas there in the stomach? Anybody see a lot of gas in the large intestine right here? Anybody see some inflammation that's taking place in through here, which is going to be in the small intestines? So you see the presence of gas? What does that mean? And this is actually diagnostic in medical school. If you see the presence of a lot of gas, you're going to see the presence of what? A lot of what? Inflammation. So this girl comes in, and I kid you not, she's 26 years of age. She's been on inhalers for 20 years of her life. She has chronic headaches. She has severe digestive issues. She has terrible, terrible, painful menstrual cycles. She's got eczema all over her skin, and she suffers with severe depression. At 26. You think she was taking a medication for all those things? Birth control, pain pills, antidepressants, things to influence her digestive system, taking steroids, put them on her arms all the time in order to decrease the inflammation that was taking place on her skin. Okay? So this was her x-ray. So you see all that inflammation that's taking place. First thing that we did is, let's figure out the foods that you're actually creating inflammation to. And this is really important. Because someone says, is this good for me? And guess what I say?
I don't know.
It depends. Is cauliflower good for you?
Maybe.
Maybe. It can be. It depends. So watch. This woman, here's what she was eating every single day. She was a fitness instructor. So here she was teaching people about the important things about exercise, but she was still taking 6 different medications. So watch. Here's what she ate every day. Almonds, eggs, cheese, a bunch of milk, and eating a bunch of like beef, protein, and chicken, and seafood. Okay. Now, when we looked at her food allergy test, this was actually measuring, is she having an inflammatory response to her foods? So here she was reacting to almonds. She was reacting to casein. You guys know what casein is?
Cheese.
Yeah, that's the protein in cheese. So little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet eating her curds, which is the casein, and whey, which is the milk protein. So she was reacting every time she ate cheese. She was having an inflammatory response. She was having cashews and having an inflammatory response to. She was cauliflower. She was reacting to cauliflower, reacting to coconut, because these days everyone puts coconut where? Everywhere. Egg whites and egg yolks, flaxseed, cow's milk, even mustard, peanuts, white potatoes, turkey, soybeans, sesame, and white rice. Because as fitness instructors, what do I tell people to do? Eat a bunch of chicken and turkey and rice, to give yourself carbs. So she'd been eating all of that. And so every time that she would eat that, what would happen? An inflammatory response inside the body. What was that inflammation causing? Everything. So not only did she feel like garbage, but it was creating all of those inflammatory reactions. And guess what? What do you think that was doing to that Swiss watch? It was functioning normally when she was born, and it just kept slowing everything down. So the first thing you need to figure out is are the foods that I'm eating, are they healing me? Are they non-inflammatory, or are they inflammatory? This is the reason why. Because we have had people, as we start to do this more and more, do you think like some of the keyboard commandos start to come out? You know what a keyboard commando is? Someone who's got an opinion, who hides behind a keyboard but will never tell you in real life. So we always had, in fact, I had to call up medical doctors, I've had to call up fitness instructors or certified nutritionists and whatnot, and here's what they say about food allergy testing. And it proves to me that they have no idea what they're talking about. Because I remember a guy had literally so many different food allergies and had problems with reflux and things like that. He said, took it to his medical doctor and he said, what do you think about this? And the medical doctor says, oh, what this means is just means that your body has been exposed to it. Now wait a second. Yes, wait a second. Wait a second. Remember how I just said that the digestive system is completely external to your body's internal environment? Did you know that? So from mouth to anus, it's completely outside of the body's internal environment. All right? Just remember that. So when someone says it means that you have had exposure to it, what does that mean? It means your digestive system is not completely external to your body's internal environment. Does that make sense? Okay? So the problem is you have exposure to it. So now you have to figure out, well, why does your body have an exposure to it? Because it's not supposed to have an exposure to it. You guys ever heard of what's known as leaky gut? All right, here's the thing. If you guys look at your skin, so your skin, you guys know you have skin because it protects you from your body, the external environment, to your body's internal environment. So your skin, the cells line up like this. So you have 5 to 6 layers of skin. They all stack up on one another. When you start to go into the small intestines, you have one layer of cells. And the cells look like this, and they go line around the whole entire tube of the small intestine, but it's only one cell layer thick. That's it. Why do you think that is? So that when you eat food, it only has to pass through one barrier. It's supposed to get broken down into the smallest pieces as possible, and then so small that it can be transported through the cells, and then go into the blood supply, and then get distributed throughout the rest of the body. So here's what happens. Anyone have stress? Yeah. So stress will shut down the digestive system, and stress will also cause these cells to start to tear apart. How about this? Toxins. Are all of you 100% toxin free? There is no way on God's green earth that all of you, even no matter how great you're trying, are going to be 100% toxin free. One of the biggest things that is going to start to do this to your digestive system, you guys have any idea that we are consuming every single day? Have no idea. You know what it's called? Roundup. It's called glyphosate, also known as Roundup. Do you guys know that Roundup is where? Everywhere. Is it in your water? Probably, because we spray it on the fields and we spray it on our grass all the time. Roundup is also in our corn and soybeans. Why is that? Because corn and soybeans are genetically modified with the intention to be able to be Roundup resistant. So you spray it on the corn doesn't die, but all the weeds do. Does that end up in your food? Absolutely. Here's what's even worse. When you look at wheat, wheat is not genetically modified, but as soon as the wheat matures, you know what the farmer says? I ain't waiting around for this.
Kill it.
Let's kill it right away. Its job is done, so they swath it with Roundup. And that's even more toxic because that's what happens. The Roundup actually ends up on the mature grain. And where does it end up? In the wheat and bread and the pasta that you're consuming every single day. So they know. Do you guys know that Roundup is bad? You don't have to go research it, because right now there's a guy that just won a lawsuit for something like $73 million because they proved it caused lymphoma, caused cancer. And now they have about 180 different lawsuits that are against Monsanto because of this Roundup. Now, have you guys been seeing this whole idea, like everyone's like, gluten's killing us, gluten's killing us, gluten's killing us? And I'm like, I don't think it's the gluten, but most people should be what? Gluten-free, not because necessarily the wheat gluten, and some people it is, the wheat gluten is the one that's killing you, because there's no way on God's green earth that everyone has a gluten sensitivity all of a sudden. But in the last 20 years, what is ending up in our wheat? Glyphosate. And it is tearing apart our digestive system. So food particles too. So are there food particles that can damage the digestive system? In a lot of people, it is actually gluten or things like gliadin, which are going to be gluten proteins that are similar to gluten. What about your drugs? What's the number one drug that's going to start poking holes in your gastrointestinal system? Antibiotics. And do you guys take antibiotics? Every time that you do that, you're destroying the gastrointestinal system. So antibiotics are going to do it. Or maybe some of you have different types of pathogens, viral infections or bacterial infections, or maybe you have organ malfunction that's going on. Maybe you have a gallbladder that doesn't work very well. Maybe you have a fatty liver because you've been consuming too much sugars and grains and things like that. So when all of these things start to happen, there's two things that need to happen. Number one, you need an inflammatory trigger, and which is going to be all of these different things. And then number two, you can't break your food down the way that it's supposed to. That's the two things that means. So when you look at a food allergy test, it means you got proteins, carbohydrates, and large fats that are leaking into the digestive system. So there's got to be a reason for it to leak into the blood supply, number one. But number two, it also means if you have a large protein that's ending up in the blood, you're not breaking your food down the way that you're supposed to. And that means you got a problem with your stomach, or your pancreas, or your gallbladder. So people say, should I take a probiotic? I'm like, here's the thing. A probiotic is never ever going to work unless the digestive system is properly acidified. But what happens? Why do people not have enough acid being produced in their digestive system? What's the number one thing? Stress. Because when you're stressed, guess what happens? Your stomach doesn't produce enough acid. And it doesn't break down your foods. So when we look at a food allergy test and someone has a bunch of fats in there that are ending up and the immune system is seeing, I'm saying, you got a gallbladder issue, don't you? No, I don't. Yeah, because your body's not breaking down the fats. If you have a bunch of carbohydrates in your food allergy, your pancreas is not secreting those exocrine enzymes to break down your carbohydrates. If you have a bunch of proteins on your food allergy test, guess what that means? Your stomach isn't breaking down your proteins. You're not secreting enough acid the way that you're supposed to. So then what happens is you have a proper foods that aren't getting broken down. Now you have a vehicle for it to be able to go through. Now you have an inflammatory response to those foods. Where does that inflammation end up? Everywhere. Can that alone start to cause elevated cholesterol? Can that alone produce an elevated stress levels that's going to cause elevated insulin inside the body? Yes. Can that alone cause a lot more joint pain inside your body? There you go. Because I know that when I eat my food allergies, guess what? My knee swells up the size of a basketball, my back hurts really bad. So you have to start knowing what foods are creating inflammation or which ones aren't. How do you know which ones are doing that for you? You test. You don't guess. However, we've tested 200 people or so, and guess what? These are going to be the most common inflammatory foods. How about whey and casein? So that's why we don't carry whey protein in here anymore. What's whey? Whey is a protein from milk. How many of you consume milk all the time? Milk is extremely inflammatory in almost every single person. Casein, this is going to be basically don't have milk derivatives, and don't have any cheese. Yeah, but I don't know. I like my pizza. Stop it! Stop it! What do you want? You want to be healthy or do you want to enjoy food? You put that food in. I can't do it now. I cannot put it in my mouth knowing that it's producing an inflammatory reaction inside my body. Okay? How about wheat? So avoid dairy, avoid wheat because of gluten and the glyphosate. How about egg whites and egg yolks? So this is most common. People are reacting to eggs. Now what about corn and soy? Why should you avoid corn and soy? GMO. Yeah, because mostly all of that is GMO, which is going to have a large glyphosate load. So how do you know if you got any of those things like cauliflower and things like that? You don't guess. You test. One of the most profound clinical things that you can get from a food allergy test is to see what's causing inflammation, but to also assess, do you have issues with leaky gut? And do you also have issues with even properly digesting your foods the way that you're supposed to? Well, what about probiotics? Should I just take a probiotic? Here's the thing. You could put all this probiotic on this carpeting, and we'll come back 4 weeks later, and what are those probiotics doing? They're dead because you don't have the right environment. When should you add a probiotic? When the environment is fixed, right? So test, don't guess. Here's some more common inflammatory foods. Things that you should never have. Hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated oils. Basically fats that are coming in a package. Monosodium glutamate or yeast extract. This is known as MSG. Why is this bad? This is a brain toxin, okay? So this excites the brain's neurons so much that if you keep exciting the brain's neurons, they will eventually wear out and die. Just like you can excite your pancreas so much to keep secreting insulin, and if you keep doing it, you're going to wear it out and it's going to die. High fructose corn syrup in and of itself is going to be inflammatory, and it's the #1 cause of having a fatty liver. Enriched white sugar flour, aspartame, Splenda, Ace K, what are these? Artificial sweeteners, which are toxic in and of itself. Any kind of vegetable oil or any kind of artificial colors. Here's the second thing that you start to fix. Your insulin. This is going to start to make a lot of sense. Now watch. Is this you? Dr. Nate, I'm fatigued, I have constant hunger, inability to lose weight, cravings for sugar, fatigue after meals, migrating aches and pains, upper abdominal obesity, and I have an increase in fat storage. Is that me? Is that you? Guess what? You have a problem with what's known as insulin resistance. Let me talk to you about insulin resistance. Every single time that you consume something that is going to increase your blood sugar, and the biggest things that are going to increase your blood sugar is going to be what? Carbohydrates. Now, are carbohydrates bad? No, but you eat too many carbohydrates, okay? When you eat all of that, it's going to elevate the blood sugar. So now within the blood, you have all of this glucose. So the body says, all right, we either need to use this as energy or we're going to store it. You're going to use it as energy or we're going to store it. And guess what? Chances are you ain't going to use it as energy, so you're going to do what instead? You're going to store it. Because insulin is not the blood sugar reducing hormone, it's the fat storing hormone. So really, it's only using about 2 to 3 grams of that sugar to use as energy, and the rest of it is doing what? Going into fat storage. Now, the pancreas has to release that insulin. And so every time you have that insulin response, that insulin has to attach to the cell receptors and say, hey, we got sugar coming, open that up, let that glucose go back in. Now that really works. In fact, it works really well because if you look at children, haven't you ever noticed they eat all this sugar and they never put on any kind of weight? Yeah, because they're really insulin sensitive. They really hear it really well. But if you keep bombarding the body, keep bombarding the cells with that insulin all the time, guess what? The cells say, the receptors, they just get knocked down. They get knocked down. And they stop hearing it. They don't hear the insulin. They keep getting knocked down. And guess what you got to do in order to try to get that sugar in? Do you need more insulin or less? You need a whole heck of a lot more insulin for those cells to be able to hear it. And it's kind of like smoking, right? Like people who smoke, 1 cigarette knocks them on their butt the first time, but within 10 years, they're smoking 2 packs and they're like, I don't feel it at all. Well, if you want to become more sensitive to insulin, what do? Stop, or to nicotine. Stop smoking. Go back in 6 months and have 1 cigarette and see how you do. And it's the same thing. Someone is a type 2 diabetic, I mean, my goodness, what do you need to do? You need to stop lowering this insulin response to make your body more sensitive to it. Although in medicine, what do? We keep giving people more insulin, and we exacerbate the problem even worse. It's no different than if you said, Doc, I'm smoking, I don't feel the cigarettes anymore, I don't feel the nicotine. And he says, well, I guarantee one thing's going to do it. Let's double your packs. Well, of course that's going to work, and then you're just in this endless cycle speeding towards a disease process. So insulin resistance, the inability of the body to be able to hear insulin. Here's what happens though, is that this is going to cause a hormone imbalance. You guys ever heard of polycystic ovarian syndrome? We have a woman, we just tested her. We just tested her for it, for the hormonal effects that was going on. And guess what? Her insulin levels at 32 years of age were sky high. The other thing that it's going to cause is it's going to cause estrogen dominance. What is estrogen dominance? You have what?
An overabundance.
An overabundance of estrogen inside of the body. This is terrible for women because you know what? If you have estrogen dominance, you feel like garbage. Because as soon as you start having estrogen dominance, what hormone is going to start to tank? And it's the hormone, ladies, that make you feel fantastic. I mean, great. Makes you feel great, and a lot of women are taking it exogenally with lotions and patches.
Progesterone?
Progesterone. So it's going to tank your progesterone levels. And then what happens is bye-bye normal menstrual cycle, bye-bye fertility, bye-bye all of those things that you need when you're of cycling age. So as soon as you start having estrogen dominance, guess what also happens? So guess what hormone competes with your thyroid? Estrogen. If you have an overabundance of estrogen, it's going to automatically compete for thyroid, and you're going to see that you're going to become what? Hypothyroid. And then, here's the problem, is that now, because your thyroid's tanking, it's going to cause more what? Fat storage. And now you're like, now I understand why this can become so hard. Now I understand because my nutrition coach said it's just about calories in and calories out. And that's not working for me. Now you know it's much more complex than actually that. So here's what happens. Anytime, this is like a vicious circle. This is why it can be so hard to get out of. Because I want you to think of this. As you start to put on weight, you're going to have an increase in what's known as aromatase. Aromatase is an enzyme that takes your testosterone and is going to convert it into estradiol, which is an estrogen. As it starts to convert that testosterone into estradiol, it's going to increase all your estrogens. It's going to cause a decrease in muscle mass and an increase in fat, which then increases your obesity, which then increases the aromatase, and it just keeps doing this. And what's the thing that is actually speeding this along, that's making it worse and exacerbating it, is the foods that you eat. that are causing an increase in what? Insulin. It's not just that. It's not just your estrogens, and it's not just the fact you gain weight. It's the fact that you actually lose brain matter. So this is your, because remember, if you have very high fasting blood glucose levels, it automatically is going to mean you're going to have high insulin levels. So look at this. Once you hit your fasting glucose levels, meaning you fasted for 8 hours and taken a blood test, as soon as it gets to be above 99, you actually start having shrinkage of the brain. So is dementia and is Alzheimer's and is forgetfulness and loss of mental acuity, is it just because of old age? Well, it's because you are having the wrong nutrition, high amounts of insulin, elevating your blood sugar all the time, and you do that over time, and that actually will cause the damage and the damage and the disease to the brain and the mental decline. So it's not because you're getting older, it's because as you get older, you just are accumulating more and more damage. You guys ever heard of diabetes brain? Look at anyone with type 2 diabetes and guess what? They have type 3 diabetes, which is dementia and Alzheimer's. Because as this continues to happen, every single year, you're seeing a systematic atrophy of the brain as a result. Now, this is actually a patient. How do you know if you have high insulin levels? Well, what do? You test. Do doctors test your insulin levels? No. We have patients be like, please test my insulin. And you know what they say? No. They say, well, why not? They say, because I can't do anything about it. And if I can't do anything about it, and I submit a test that your insurance pays for it, guess what? They're going to make me pay for it. So, do doctors measure insulin? Nope. Do they measure leptin levels? They measure your glucose, but do they measure your hemoglobin A1c? Sometimes. So, here's your insulin. That's the amount of insulin inside of your blood, okay? This is going to be high before your blood sugar is going to be high. So if you have high amounts of insulin and your blood sugar is normal, you're still pre-diabetic. It just means that your body needs more insulin for the blood sugar in order to lower. It's because you're not hearing the insulin anymore. So this should be under 21, but ideally, for not to have any kind of brain shrinkage, it should be at about 5 or under. Okay? So look at hers. It was at 60. That's the highest insulin levels I've seen to date. Here's the next one. You guys know what leptin is, because this is going to parallel this one. You guys know what leptin is? Leptin's your hunger hormone. Ever wonder why you graze all day and eat all day and never feel like really full? Well, if you have high insulin levels, you're also going to have these high leptin levels. And that means if your leptin levels are high, you're just like, gosh, I just ate and I'm just hungry again. I got to eat. These are the people who are overeating all the time because they have no hormonal mechanism to shut it off and say, I'm done and I'm full. And by the way, the more weight that you put on, the more those leptin levels continue to go up. And some people are like, I don't understand. Can't you just stop eating? Well, hormonally, these people just can't. They just don't know when to because of these hormone levels. So here's her glucose. Now, is her glucose elevated? Now it finally is. And do you guys know what a hemoglobin A1c means? You guys know what that is? That's a 90-day average of your blood sugar. And basically what they say, how they measure this, they measure your red blood cells for the degradation of your blood cells. Now think about that. The degradation of your blood cells over 90 days, which means is that insulin damaging your soft tissues? Yep. And this is why people with high insulin levels, why they have stiffness, mobility issues, more arthritis, and they have more heart disease because it's damaging the soft tissues inside the body. So, she's a diabetic, and a diabetic. Now, because you have type 2 diabetes, is that a death sentence? Doctor says you're type 2 diabetic, you're going to have it for the rest of your life. So this is actually 90 days. So in 90 days, we retested. Her insulin levels went from 400% down. So it went from 60 down to 15. Glucose went down as well. You see her hemoglobin A1c went to under being diabetic. And then you can see that her leptin levels actually went down by 50%. So what happened?
She changed her diet.
She's not diabetic anymore in 90 days. Now, did I tell her to do keto? Nope. And in fact, I'll tell you why keto probably would have killed her. But what were the two things that we focused on first? Did I tell her to lose weight? Nope. I didn't tell her to lose weight at all. What were the two things that we focused on? Non-inflammatory, number one. And number two, insulin. What to do when it comes to lowering her insulin levels. And guess what? Did it work? What would happen if she went back to her same lifestyle? What's going to happen?
Go right there.
You know how many people are like, oh, I fixed it, I guess I'm good. I can go back to the same thing that got me into the problem in the first place. No, she's going to have to work at this for the rest of her life. Okay? So, highest insulin releasing foods. Processed sugar, refined grains, high fructose corn syrup the most, some fruit, and guess what? Stress. So, Dr. Nate, do you recommend fruit? Guess what I say? It depends. If you're a diabetic, guess what? What am I going to say? You're going to avoid fruit. For the rest of your life? Nope. But until we get your labs back under control. Guys ever heard of fatty liver? Yep, fatty liver. So fatty liver is one of the biggest health things that are happening in people at 40s and 50s and 60 years of age. You know how many people have been undiagnosed and have fatty liver? What's fatty liver? Fatty liver is due to chronic liver inflammation that produces first fat in the liver, and then it's going to produce scarring. And then you got a liver that ain't working the way that it's supposed to. So what can cause scarring and inflammation in fatty liver? What's causing it? Well, you know, if people are alcoholics, what do they suffer from? Cirrhosis of the liver, because processing that alcohol all the time produces what? Damage, which then is inflammation, and then fat, and then scarring. Well, here's the thing. You can produce a fatty liver by over-consuming high fructose corn syrup or fructose. And that fatty liver, guess what? Is due to long-term liver inflammation. So can stress cause chronically high insulin levels? Can you become a type 2 diabetic on stress alone? Yes, you can. Here's the reason why. Because when I'm stressed, every time I have a stress response, mental, physical, or chemical, every time I have a stress response, my body tries to raise my what? My blood sugar to make energy more available to my extremities. Because again, a bear's chasing me, what do I have to do? I have to run, I have to jump, I have to punch, I have to tell him a funny joke, I have to do whatever, right? So I need more blood sugar to provide energy to my muscles. So as soon as I have a stress response, and if my blood sugar is low, my pancreas releases glucagon, which is going to mobilize sugars and make them ready for that emergency. But guess what happens when you have mental stress? You don't need more energy. Does that make sense? You don't need more physical energy, so now you just mobilize all these sugars, and then it says, well, whoops, I guess you didn't need it, so then it releases what? Insulin to bring it back down again. Does that make sense? And that's why if you're not addressing the physical and mental component to diabetes, you will still stay sick. You guys got 10 seconds to memorize this. All right? If you can't, you're cleaning up the office afterwards. You guys see any of that make any sense here? Cholesterol, good or bad? It's always good. How about progesterone? Heard of that? You guys ever heard of these things? These are known as your what? Estrogens. There's no such thing as estrogen. They're estrogens, and you produce a lot of them. You guys know what this is right here? You guys ever heard of DHT? Guys, pay attention to this. DHT. DHT. Dihydrotestosterone. This is the most potent form of testosterone, is DHT. Okay? How do you know if you have high amounts of DHT? Now watch. This is going to be a pearl. You're going to take this home and you're going to share this on Facebook, and everyone's going to be like, are you kidding me? DHT. If a man loses the hair on the bottoms of his legs, he has high amounts of DHT. Because what does DHT do? It destroys the hair follicle. And the first place it's going is going to be on the head. Second place it's going is on your ankles. And you lose hair on your ankles. When I see a man, I say, your testosterone is absolutely tanked. Go home and ask your husband, look at his ankles, and then ask him, you have low amounts of testosterone, and maybe that explains why your man doesn't want to have sex, why he has no energy, and he's unmotivated. Because that will tank the testosterone. So DHT, you know what else it causes? It will cause long-term swelling of a gland that is specific to men. What gland is that? Prostate. So is a swollen prostate, is it actually due to the fact that they're taking all their testosterone and converting into DHT. And what will do that the quickest? Insulin. So high amounts of insulin is going to do that the quickest. Make sense? Now, how about this? It will also turn into your estrogens. So that insulin will activate that enzyme called aromatase and then convert it into your estrogens. Now watch what happens. This is where you're going to put on fat if you're having too much estrogen. You're estrogen dominant. Men, you will develop breasts. You will develop what's known as the dad bod. So you develop breasts, a gut, fat on the thighs, fat on the butt, and then you have a nice flank steak in the back, right? How about women? What happens when you're estrogen dominant? You'll actually become more feminine. What I mean by that is that you start having more weight on your butts, on your hips, not as much in the belly, but you'll notice that your breasts get bigger, and then you develop the bye-bye arms. You know what I'm talking about? Bye-bye. Okay? That knows right there if you're converting your testosterone into estrogen. And do you know what the number one roadblock for women to lose weight is? The fact that they don't have any testosterone. Women, you actually need testosterone to be able to put on muscle mass and be able to lose weight, but whatever little that you're making it, you're just converting it into your estrogens. After menopause, ladies, where are you producing your testosterone from? You guys know where you're producing it from? Your adrenal glands. What happens if you are so stressed? Can your adrenal glands, it would rather make this, cortisol, your stress hormone, than to make this. Does that make sense? Because to the body, what's more important? Getting away from the bear or losing weight? There you go. All right, so now next thing is going to be your micronutrients. Your micronutrients, you have your vitamins, your A, D, E, and K. Now what's the purpose of micronutrients? They are basically facilitating metabolism and cellular function inside the body. They're not a miracle thing. Now, if you have what are known as antioxidants, what do antioxidants do? Basically, all antioxidants do is you do something, you get some DNA damage, and the antioxidant then just neutralizes it. That's all it does. So when they say, oh, this is anti-cancer, no, it's not anti-cancer. It's just doing what the normal physiology of the body is supposed to do. And remember, the normal physiology of the body is what? Not to have cancer. So you have your fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K. I won't go into the function of those, but understand that it's fat-soluble. Fat-soluble means your body has the ability to be able to do what? Store them. Your water-soluble is going to be your vitamins B, your vitamin C. Water-soluble means that your body cannot store them within the fat cells. So which one do you think you can become most deficient in? B, especially. You can become very deficient very quickly in these. These are going to take some time in order for you to become deficient in. Now, minerals, sodium, iodine, potassium, calcium, magnesium, iron. So all of these different minerals help to facilitate processes inside the body. So there's certain things that the body can't manufacture, whether they're hormones, or whether they're neurotransmitters, or whether they're being able to produce energy within the cell. It can't do these unless they have these here, depending on what process needs to be developed. So you need these things, otherwise these processes cannot happen. Now, how many times your doctors say be on a low-salt diet? I'm like, what in the world? One of the most abundant minerals inside your body, even for just your nerve system to work right, is sodium. Do you really think a low-salt diet or a high-salt diet is killing you? No. Well, he says I need to do it to get rid of swelling, to help my heart. Reason why you're swollen is not because of sodium. The reason why you're swollen is because you're inflamed. So, best sources of sodium, where do you get them from? Not table salt, you get it from what?
Sea salt.
Yeah,
Salt.
unrefined sea salt, Himalayan sea salt, Celtic sea salt. And your salt, I put it as much as I want on that, and it should be brown, flecked, and dirty. That's what it should look like, or pink.
Yeah.
So what about your iodine? So listen, if you have low iodine, guess what? Like low iodine, you're going to have low thyroid function. It's not usually the case very often, but you shouldn't be getting your iodine from table salt. You guys know that? Your body doesn't even absorb that. So what are the best sources of getting iodine? usually from eating like sea vegetables and seafood is going to help you get the highest sources of your iodine. Now, if you're iodine deficient, you can have a low functioning thyroid. You guys know what else? If you're low in iodine, you guys know that women especially, you won't be able to sweat. You work out and you're like, I don't sweat very much.
Oh, interesting.
The other thing is iodine will also cause soft tissue nodules if you're deficient in it. So you'll start to have soft tissue nodules. Now, how about potassium? So potassium is also really needed by the nerve system. Potassium, if you look at how the nerve system functions, it functions on sodium and potassium. It's called the sodium-potassium pump. Anytime I do this, I need sodium and potassium. Which means if I become potassium deficient, really potassium deficient, what do I get? Cramps. Now, you guys know that you need potassium to be able to even lose weight. And you should be getting a lot of potassium every single day. About 3 to 4 grams of it every single day. Calcium. How are you going to absorb calcium? Is the only place you get calcium from milk? No! Where am I supposed to get my calcium from if I'm not supposed to have dairy? How many of you thought that? Well, guess what? Here's a secret tip. Anything that's going to grow from the soil are going to always automatically have those minerals in it. Does that make sense? Now, here's a fun fact about calcium. Should I be taking a calcium supplement? What are the best kind of calcium supplements? And I'm like this. Well, look at your stomach. I have osteoporosis. I'm like, did the doctor assess to see if you would actually produce enough acid? Because if you don't produce enough acid, guess what? You can have all the calcium that you want, but your stomach has to be in an acidic environment for you to be able to absorb the calcium. You know that. So the first thing is you got to fix your digestive system. Then you also have magnesium, all right? So magnesium and then iron. So you actually need iron too. Do you know how many women that we see are iron deficient? Iron deficient. And in fact, the hardest one to get up, getting someone's iron up can take months to get those levels back up. Now, here's the thing. If you don't have a gallbladder, you have big problems. You say, I got my gallbladder out, and I realize that I do have big problems. Because we thought the gallbladder was just, no, it's just a reservoir. That's all it is. Yeah, you don't need it. If you got stones, you got to figure out why you had the stones in the first place. But what happens is, you say, doctor took my gallbladder out. What do I need to do? And I can already guess, here's what the problems that you have. You have massive hormone problems. Most of your hormones are coming from fat and from cholesterol. You also have a big problem absorbing food, belching, bloating, things like that, because you are not absorbing fats the way that you're supposed to. If you don't have a gallbladder, guess what happens? You don't have that storage tank that's there, that when you eat fat, it squirts it into the digestive system to start to break down the fats. So instead, you know what your liver does? Just leaks it out little by little throughout the whole day. That's why you don't have a gallbladder. Guess what? You have to be on pancreatic enzymes, and you have to be on probably an exogenous gallbladder every time that you eat to help you break down your foods. And yes, you do that for the rest of your life. Because guess what? This is where supplements come in. I can't regrow you a gallbladder anymore. But this is why, if you don't have a gallbladder, I guarantee if you measure your vitamin D, it's what? Absolutely tanked. Because what do you need in order to absorb these vitamins? You need bile. And if you don't have it, you now become sick because you're going to be deficient in those vitamins. Make sense? So, where do you get your micronutrients from? Well, this is kind of a novel idea. Dark green leafy vegetables, kale, spinach, arugula, dandelion, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, asparagus. Okay? I don't like those, though. Okay, remember, what's the purpose of food? I guarantee you'll like food more if you know what it's doing for you. Does that make sense? Now, are these things necessary? Are these things all good for you? Depends. How about cauliflower, cabbage, onions, peppers, and carrots? Are those things good for you? If you had no food allergies, they're great for you. All right? How about fruit? There's still a lot of good nutrients that are in fruit. So who should eat fruit? Everyone should be. Unless you have what? Problems with the insulin. Now, best kind of meats. I'm going to say this. Best kind of meats are going to be organ meats. So the meats that are going to be the highest amount of nutrients is going to be like beef liver. And I say the same thing. That is disgusting. So you know what I take instead? I take desiccated beef liver, because they're going to be the highest in things like B vitamins. They're going to be the highest in things like nitric oxide. So you're going to have an iron, because everything in a cow has to go through the liver. So fatty fish, grass-fed beef, free-range chicken, cage-free eggs, raw nuts and seeds are always going to be good. They're going to be high in selenium and high in tyrosine and things like that. However, you may have a problem not breaking that stuff down. So before you're consuming that, you should focus on fixing your what? Your digestive system. Now, brown rice, barley, millet, beans, lentils, things like that, are these necessarily going to be bad for people? Only if they have an allergy to it, and it also can be difficult if someone has a problem with what? Their insulin. But if you gave this to someone who doesn't have an insulin issue, guess what happens? They do absolutely fine. Now, there's also something in some of these things, and it's called insoluble fiber. Okay? What's the purpose of insoluble fiber? And everyone says, it's to help me have better bowel movements, right? Well, kinda. But the reason why insoluble fiber is so important for people is that it's going to improve what's known as short-chain fatty acids in the stool or in the large intestine. You guys know what short-chain fatty acids are? So these are the fatty acids that your healthy microbiome make that helps with all of these other processes inside of your body. So that microbiome, it needs to be properly acidified, number one, but you also need to give it food for it to be able to eat. Well, I'm taking probiotics. Everything should be good. Does it have any food? No. Now, I know for a fact, because how many of you take a probiotic? And you take a probiotic, we measure on the stool, and it measures like all the probiotics, and guess what? They're not growing. They're zero. It's like lactobacillus. It's zero. And I'm like, well, you're planting the seeds, but you don't have the soil for it to be able to grow. So that's why the upper part of your digestive system is going to be more important. Sweet potatoes, avocados, you said that, right? Avocados. Again, avocados are a good source of getting insoluble fiber, to help with that prebiotic food. Unrefined sea salt, Celtic sea salt. This is where you're going to be getting some of your iodine. You're going to be getting your sodium, which is going to be great for you. But how about superfoods? Now, ladies, if you like chocolate, start consuming a lot of raw cacao. We actually have it here. Because we have ladies come in when they're having, they want to go on their chocolate binge. We're going to have some raw cacao instead. So chocolate comes from cacao, but milk chocolate is processed cacao with what? Dairy that's in it. Okay. So lucuma, camu. In fact, this is your highest value for vitamin C. It comes from camu, goji berries, and maca. All right. You guys know that maca helps with what? Men. What does it help with? Testosterone. Yep. Now you're going to run out and get it without fixing these other things. All right? Now, next thing is your macronutrients, okay? Now let's talk about macronutrients. So you start doing this and this, are you going to be in a lot better place? And in fact, you may never even need to get to this. Does that make sense? Now you need to focus on your macronutrients. We have people like there are, some of our diabetics. I'm like, did you notice I never talked about weight loss? They're like, yep. I'm like, how much weight did you lose? 30 pounds. But we never talked about it. So macronutrients, what we mean by this is we mean by the carbohydrates, the fats, the proteins, because that's what everything is broken down. Carbohydrates is going to use for fuel, and it's going to be for fiber. Protein's going to be for repair and for immunity. Fats are going to be for fuel when you run out of these, and it's going to be for production of hormones and absorption and storage of your vitamins A, D, E, and K. So which ones are the most important? All of them. Now, have carbs gotten a bad name lately? Yes. Why have they gotten a bad name? Because overconsumption of this is what's actually causing most of these issues in through here. And it's also causing a lack of micronutrient content. Because a lot of your carbs, what kind of nutritional value do they have? Nothing. Just a bunch of energy with nothing to contribute. So, macronutrients. Then you can start focusing on the types of macronutrients or the ratios that you should actually get. So how many people have heard of ketogenic? So I'm going to tell you right now, if you get nothing from this, there is going to be tremendous value with what I tell you right now. Ketogenic. How many of you have tried ketogenic? Okay. So some of you, I know that you tried it. You just don't want to tell me. So ketogenic. So what's the idea? Ketogenic is going to be very little carbs. Some say 5%, I say 10, 65% fats, 25% is going to be proteins. So it's going to be right around there. Now, is ketogenic good? It
Can be.
depends. So what are the biggest dependent criteria on whether you should be doing ketogenic or not? Number one, whether you're a man or a woman, I always say this, ketogenic should be cyclical. What I mean by that is that your lifestyle should not be all ketogenic. Does that make sense? Meaning if you're going to do ketogenic, you should cycle it for 2 to 3 months at most, and then changing it back. The reason why is this, is that can ketogenic be a stress on your body? Yes. Sometimes I realize there's going to be, like this is going to be a stress, but I realize that this temporary stress is going to trump the long-term stress that how you're eating before is causing. So you should, number one, cycle it. Who will do better on this, men or women?
Men.
100% men. If a woman is cycling, so she's having her menstrual cycle, do I ever recommend ketogenic for them? No, because I've seen women do it and lose their menstrual cycle, which means hormonally you're becoming sicker. Does that make sense? Now, when it comes to, like, now if someone has, for example, a woman has a very high amount of testosterone, she's having some insulin issues, PCOS and things like that, will I recommend that for her? Yes, but not for very long. Now, who should never do this? I don't care how healthy you think you are.
Somebody without a gallbladder.
There you go. You know how many women have come to me and said, I watched YouTube on the ketogenic diet, I tried it, I don't have a gallbladder, and what do they say? They always say this, it never worked, I put on weight, and I felt sicker. Because if you're putting 65% of your total calories as fat without a gallbladder, guess what's happening? You are causing so much digestive distress because that fat is going straight through you and it's ending up in the stool producing all kinds of inflammation. Make sense?
Yep.
No gallbladder, no bueno. So again, who should do it, men or women? All men can do it. The reason why is you don't have all this complex hormones, so men can do it. Do men do very well on it?
Yes.
Yes. And if you have insulin issues, should you do it if you're a man? 100%. Unless you don't have a gallbladder. But again, how do you know what kind of fats, proteins, carbs that you should be eating? What do you get? You test your food so that you're not doing keto and producing all kinds of inflammation. Now, I've done keto before. Prior to doing food testing, I'm like, I don't feel so good. And you know why? Because what did I test? I tested my foods after the fact. And what was I using to try to get all kinds of fats into my diet? A lot of
dairy,
cheese, coconut oil, and what do I react to?
Cheese and coconut.
The biggest. Coconut oil and cheese and any kind of dairy. So you can produce lots of inflammation. And this was true because I would work out. I'm like, I'm doing keto, I'd work out, and I would feel like a disaster the next morning. Because I would eat and all that inflammation would go where? To my joints. So ketogenic. Here's the next one, zone. You guys ever heard of zone? Zone is 40% carbs, 30% proteins, 30% fats. Going back to this, the other thing I don't recommend this for, anyone who's got any kind of adrenal issues. Okay, any kind of adrenal issues. Now how about zone? So what is zone? So zone is going to be a little bit more carbs, a little bit less fat, and it's going to be a little bit more protein. So who does really good when it comes to zone?
women probably.
Yeah, women do typically better with zone. People who have autoimmunity are going to do better because there's going to be less stress on the adrenals when you give the body more carbs. When you give the body more carbs, you know what the body says? Ah, I'm not starving. That makes me feel really good.
It's got to be the right carbs though.
The right carbs, yes, exactly, the right carbs. So you see, most of the time when we go to a nutritionist, they're going to say, here's your supplements and here's your macronutrients. Eat whatever you want as long as it fits your what? Macronutrients, okay? And what happens is you see them lose weight, but they're not healthier as a result based off of their blood work. So more carbs, a little bit more protein, and a little bit less fat. Who does really good on this? You say women typically do better. Someone who's got autoimmunity, we would recommend for you to help them get a little bit more carbs, be a little bit less stressed on the body. This is really good for people who are trying to maintain a healthy body weight and who are also doing high intensity exercise. This is also great for people who are doing CrossFit, things like that, who want to perform better. Because listen, when you have a little bit more carbs, guess what? It's going to help with muscle growth a little bit better. Okay? So this is going to be good for those that are doing high intensity exercise 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week, and you've reached a weight level of actually where you want to be at. But also your hormones are going to be healthy too. I know that I recommended this like for my wife, and there's some people when they see they have a lot of adrenal fatigue, what do I tell them? Eat more carbs. Please, eat more carbs. All right? Here's the last one. Fasting. How many of you tried a 3-day, 5-day water fast? All right? Because you know, like a year ago, everyone was talking about how amazing fasting is. Now, have I done a 3-day water fast? Yes. Have I done a 5-day water fast? I've done that as well. How do you think I felt? I felt great, actually. 5 days was amazing. Because guess what hurt inside my body? Nothing. People are like, well, I guess fasting is a miracle. It's going to clear out all your inflammation. And then I realized something. I said, well, hey, wait a second. When I avoid my food allergies and I'm making sure I do what I do, nothing hurts either.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the fact that I was eating when I was fasting. What did I do? I just avoided my food allergies. I just didn't know what they were, so I avoided everything. Now, is there a benefit to fasting? Yes, there is. So who should fast? Who can fast? It depends, right? Generally speaking, all men can fast. Should women fast if you're cycling? So one thing that I would ever recommend a woman to fast if she's on her menstrual cycle, which one is that?
Intermittent.
If she has a gastric ulcer or a peptic ulcer. Yep, because one of the best things that you can do to help that peptic ulcer to heal is to drink tons of aloe juice and don't eat. Because what are you doing? The aloe juice is going to help coat the ulcer, and not eating is not going to make you produce any kind of acid. So, but how long should you fast for? 2 to 3 days. So can you do a 5-day fast? Yes. Can you do a 3-day fast? Men, typically speaking, yes. Women, can you fast? I would say, yes, you can after menopause, providing that your adrenal function is healthy. If you're cycling, should you fast? No, unless you have what? A gastric ulcer, and do it for about 2 days. And that's as long. Now, can you actually lose your menstrual cycle in 2 days? Yes, you can. But again, that's going to, healing the ulcer is going to trump losing your menstrual cycle temporarily. Make sense? So, water and minerals. Here's someone who shouldn't fast. So this is measuring a woman's adrenal function on a Dutch test. Now look at this. She has no hormones that are available. No estrogens, no progesterone, testosterone levels are normal. But if you look at this, her cortisol rhythm should look like this. Do you see how low it is? So what is that? That is chronic stress to the adrenal glands, and that's producing those stress hormones. And because this is so low, this is after menopause, guess what? She can't produce those hormones anymore. So this woman fasts. She tried it. Guess how she felt? Worse than ever before. So if you know if you should fast or not, you have to see if your adrenal function is even healthy enough to be able to handle that kind of stress. And in this case, you can't. Now here's what we teach. A lot of times in our gyms is we teach when we do people on T28 challenge, and people are coming in, they say, hey, I want to get into shape, or I have insulin issues and things like that. How would we be able to help reverse diabetes by doing 25%, 25%, and 50%? Yes, we've helped. Is this going to help everyone? Who does this help? 100% of? Men. But even women who do this, who have gallbladder issues, hormone issues, or things like that, they're still not going to do very well. Is it a problem with the nutrition in and of itself? No, it's because you have to start handling these other things before you start working on that. Okay? And this is typically where I stay, is between around here and around the zone. And a lot of it depends on how hard I'm actually working out. Last thing is this, supplements. See how you should be asking the question, supplements, when should I be taking a supplement? Now, do we have supplements here? Absolutely. And we have to have them because when you are sick, we need something to dig you out of the hole faster. Many times I say, we're going to give you these supplements until we can figure out what are the biggest triggers that are taking place inside your body. So the purpose of supplements is to dig you out of a hole, number one. And number two, you take supplements when you choose to be sassy. All right? What do I mean by sassy? You say this, Dr. Nate, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. I'm just going to take these supplements. I say, you're going to stay sick, but you're just going to stay not as sick if you're taking the supplements. Let me give you an example, okay? Now, if you know what your food allergies are, and you say this, I know what my food allergies are, I'm going to eat whatever I want anyway, then yeah, you should probably douse your internal organs with what's known as Albesia. What does Albesia do? It is anti-inflammatory because it stops the immune system response towards the foods that you're eating, which is great temporarily, but I wouldn't be doing that long term. So things like nettle leaf and Albesia help with that inflammatory response to the foods. So if I decide I'm going to have pizza, which I've had pizza one time in 9 months, is the worst mistake I ever made because I react so poorly to casein. I even doused myself with some Albesia, drank some Albesia, and I still had a reaction to it, but it was not as much. When should you also take supplements? Supplements. Well, what happens if you're going to have some kind of stress? What if you say, my parents, I had a death in the family, my parents, my cat, ran away. Something happened, I have stress at work or whatever. Well, I could always tell you, well, you need to handle it better. I guess with stress you can choose how you're going to react to it, but let's be honest. If you have a parent die or someone close to you die, you're going to be stressed or you're going to have stress at work. So this is where things like California poppy, I don't know if you guys took a shot of that before you came. I take a shot every time I talk because I hate speaking in public. And it calms me down a little bit. So CBD oil, California poppy, or kava, or stuff like that. Listen, if you know that you're going to be stressed, take that because what's that going to force the body to do? Dampen the stress response so it's protecting you while you're going through any kind of stress. But that's what the purpose is. And the purpose of every single supplement is to say, we need to give you this while we start fixing these other issues so that the body can recover. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. So supplements. How do we know what supplements to give? We do what? We test. Yep. We always test. But are there some things that are going to be good for people no matter what your tests are going to say? Yes. Because a good source, best source of protein is going to be bone broth. Not whey protein, not casein protein, not even a plant protein, because a lot of the plant proteins have a lot of heavy metals in it, and also you can have a big allergy to a lot of the proteins that are in it. What about fish oils? Should people be on a fish oil? I would say yes. When we do tests, we look at their omega-3 fatty acid levels. Who's deficient in omega-3 fatty acids that we've tested?
Probably everybody.
Everybody. And the reason why is, do you get 3 to 4 servings of fatty fish every single day or every single week? Probably not. So we know that like a lot of people, we have them take 3 to 4 grams of fish oil when we test them, but a good maintenance dose after we get those levels back to normal is we have them on about 2 grams, 1.5 to 2 grams a day. Now, I think testing people that everyone should be on vitamin B, or should be on a vitamin methylfolate, a methylated B9 and B12. Why do you think that is? Because the easiest way to deplete these vitamins is through what? Being what? Stressed. You know that. And if you become deficient in vitamin B9 and B12, what happens is it becomes very hard for your liver to detox, which also includes getting rid of your what? Estrogens. So I think all people should be on B9. Vitamin C, a great source of this is going to be camu camu. It's got the highest amount of vitamin C that even any kind of vegetable or fruit that's out there. Camu camu is actually a fruit, and it's a superfood. Okay, but it has the highest amount of vitamin C that's in it.
You get it as like a powder?
Yep. All right, vitamin D. If you don't have a gallbladder, you're going to be deficient in vitamin D. If you have higher amounts of body fat, you're going to be deficient in vitamin D because all your vitamin D is stored where? Not active in the blood, it's going to be in the body fat. 5 to 10,000 IUs. Magnesium and potassium, I recommend this for people who work out. Because if you are working out, these are the people who are like, I started working out, it was great, and then at 6 months I felt like garbage. Well, you're not replacing your electrolytes the way that you're supposed to. So do I take magnesium and potassium? Yes, I do. I take Relax, 1 to 2 teaspoons of that every single day because I work out. And when I sweat, what do I lose? Magnesium and potassium. Stress. California poppy, CBD, ashwagandha, things like that. People say, well, how do I know which one to take? Both of them will calm down the sympathetic nerve system. CBD will be more anti-inflammatory. California poppy isn't, but it's also cheaper. Make sense? So you're like, well, should I take CBD? I'm like, yeah, if you're inflamed. However, we need to figure out.
If you're allergic to hemp.
Yes, it's to hemp. Some people are allergic to coconut too, which is what it's in. However, we need to figure out why your body is so inflamed in the first place. So is CBD oil great? Yes, but it's not the cure-all that everybody says that it is. And like hormones, maca, tribulus, schisandra, things like that. These are great things in order to help with the hormones. And we'll give it to people, but the first thing that we do is we do what? We test. We test until we can we test and say you need to be on this until we can figure out what the triggers are, especially. Okay? You know who this is? These are my 2 kids. Can you tell? And this is my dad. Okay? I love my dad. Do you guys love your dad? Yep. I've also watched my dad get sick. Very sick twice. With 2 cancers. Can you believe that? Do you know how much fear in the family it produces, how much fear it produces in me? I realize I'm going to lose my parents sometimes, at some point, right? But I also don't want to watch them slowly die. And I know, I've watched my dad work his fingers to the bone to be able to provide a great life for me growing up. But one thing that was always lacking, it was always like, we're so busy I don't have time to eat right, I'll do it later. Or to exercise. And it was always, I'll do it a little while, but it was never part of my life. And the problem was with people that I realize is this, is people say this, I'm young, I still have time. But they say that at 50, and they say it at 60, and they say it at 70, and they always say, I still have time. And you know what? There are so many people who get to the point where you do not have any more time. And you know what they wish they said? I wish I had more time. You guys understand, is that when you're diagnosed with cancer, you don't care about anything else other than getting one thing back, and what is that?
Your health.
Your health. So I remember when my dad was diagnosed with cancer the first time, if you would have saw me, you would have said, you're going to become just like your dad. And I knew it. And I stopped saying I have time. Because here I was sick, I was tired, I was overweight, and I flunked my life insurance tests at 32 years of age. And then I watched my dad have cancer, and I said, Nate, it's time for you to grow up. And it's time for you to stop giving excuse after excuse how busy you are and how much you have going on, how you can't afford this. It's time for you to actually just grow up and start actually working on your health so that you don't do this to your kids, that you don't pass on a legacy to your children as well. And I remember, in an instant, what did I do? I changed. I didn't change this in an instant, and I changed this up here. And once I changed this up here, then every decision that I made became easier, because I got to make the decision, is what I put into my body, is it going to inflame me? Is it going to heal me? Or is it going to kill me? And once I started making that decision, it wasn't a grind. It became very easy after that. Here's the thing. Please don't ever say that you have more time, because you're always going to say that. You're going to say, I always have time, I always have time. But don't get to the point where the doctor looks at you and he says, I'm sorry, you don't have any more time. Don't wait until you make that decision. So this is